Hi there. Welcome to Learn English Every Day.
Here, you'll hear slow, clear English to help you learn with ease.
Let's begin.
If you were going to invest right now in your future self, where would you put your time and energy?
Oh, that is a massive question.
It really is. I want you to actually pause and think about that for a second. If you wanted to guarantee that you would be happy and healthy when you're, say, 80 years old, what is the one thing you would do today?
And, if we look at how most people live their lives, it's a question that most of us are answering completely incorrectly.
Exactly, because we actually have some really interesting data on this. There was a recent survey of millennials, young adults, asking them what their most important life goals were. And the results were pretty overwhelming.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Over 80% of them said their major life goal was to get rich.
Wow. 80%.
80%. And 50% of those same young people said another major goal was to become famous.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? We are constantly told to lean into work, to push harder, to achieve more.
Right.
We get the impression that these are the things we need to chase if we want to have a good life.
But here's the thing. What if we're wrong?
Yeah.
What if the things we think lead to happiness, money, fame, high achievement, are actually total distractions? What if we could watch entire lives unfold from the time people were teenagers all the way to old age to see what actually keeps people healthy and happy?
Well, the amazing thing is we don't have to guess because someone actually did it.
They did.
Today, we're diving deep into the Harvard study of adult development, and it is the longest study of adult life that has ever been done.
And the mission for this deep dive is twofold. First, we're going to uncover the true lessons from this 75-year study.
75 years is wild.
It is wild. And second, for all of you joining us to practice your English today, we are going to explore this topic slowly and clearly. We want to give you simple, actionable ways to build a good life, all while you practice your listening skills. So let's unpack this.
Sounds great. To really understand why this study is so special, we have to look at the scope. Like I said, this study ran for 75 years. That is almost unheard of in the world of science.
Right. Most studies like this fail within a decade.
Right. Oh, absolutely. People drop out, funding runs out, researchers get distracted, or, researchers pass away.
Right. Over 75 years, that's going to happen. But this one survived.
Through a combination of luck and the sheer persistence of several generations of researchers, this study kept going. They started tracking 724 men back in 1938.
1938.
Yeah, and about 60 of those original men are actually still alive and participating today.
That is incredible dedication.
Most of them are in their 90s now, and the study has even expanded. Now, the researchers are studying the more than 2,000 children of these men.
Okay, so who were these men? Who did they choose to study back in 1938?
This is where it gets really fascinating. They didn't just pick one type of person. They actually recruited two very specific, very different groups of men.
Okay, let's look at Group A first.
Group A started when they were sophomores at Harvard University.
And just for our listeners, a sophomore is a student in their second year of high school or university.
Exactly. So these were young men who finished college during World War II. Most of them went off to serve in the war. These were guys who, generally speaking, had a lot of privileges and opportunities.
Very well off. And then you have Group B. And this group couldn't be more different.
No, not at all. Group B was a group of boys chosen from the poorest neighborhoods in Boston. And they were chosen specifically because they were from some of the most troubled and disadvantaged families in the Boston of the 1930s.
The source material mentions that many of these boys lived in tenements. And that's a word we don't use much anymore. A tenement is a rundown and often overcrowded apartment house, usually in a poor section of a large city.
Yes, and these tenements were in bad shape. Many of the boys lived in apartments that didn't even have hot or cold running water.
Wow.
So you have the Ivy League students, the most privileged on one side, and boys living without running water on the other.
And when these teenagers joined the study, the researchers didn't just send them a survey in the mail. This was a true deep dive. They interviewed them. They gave them medical exams. They even went to their homes and interviewed their parents.
And as time went on, the methodology got even more advanced. They weren't just asking questions. They were getting medical records from their doctors. They were drawing blood. They were scanning their brains.
They even video recorded the men talking to their wives about their deepest concerns.
They really wanted to see the full picture of these lives. And the outcomes were incredibly diverse. I mean, these teenagers grew up and entered all walks of life. They became factory workers, lawyers, bricklayers, and doctors.
And one of them even became the president of the United States.
Yes, he did. It's quite a range.
It really is.
Some climbed the social ladder all the way from the bottom to the very top, but others took that journey in the exact opposite direction. Some developed alcoholism, a few developed schizophrenia.
It really shows that where you start doesn't always dictate where you finish. But the big question, the one we are all here for, is this. After tens of thousands of pages of data, after 75 years of watching these lives, what did they learn? Was it about the wealth? Was it about the fame?
The answer is a resounding no. The clearest message from the 75-year study is this. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Period.
That's it.
That's it.
It sounds so simple. I think a lot of people might hear that and think, well, obviously friends are good. But I feel like we need to really break this down because good relationships can mean a lot of things. The study actually highlights 3 specific lessons about relationships.
Yes, it does. Let's look at the first big lesson. The study found that social connections are really good for us and that loneliness kills.
Loneliness kills. That is a very strong statement. Is that a metaphor or is it literal?
Oh, it is literal. The data completely backs it up. It turns out that people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to their community are happier. They're physically healthier. And they live longer than people who are less well connected.
And the opposite is true for people who are isolated.
Sadly, yes. The experience of loneliness turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be find that they are less happy. Their health starts to decline earlier in midlife, their brain function declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely.
And this isn't a rare problem. The source mentions that at any given time, more than 1 in 5 Americans report being lonely.
It is a silent epidemic. And that leads us directly to the second lesson, because we know that you can be lonely in a crowd, and you can definitely be lonely in a marriage.
Right. So it's not just about the raw number of friends you have.
No. The second big lesson is that it is not just the number of friends you have, and it's not whether or not you are in a committed relationship. It is the quality of your close relationships that matters.
Quality over quantity. We hear that a lot. But what does the science actually say about it?
The science says that living in the midst of conflict is really bad for our health. For example, high conflict marriages where there is a lot of arguing and not much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health. In fact, they might be worse than getting divorced.
Wow. So staying in a bad situation is actually more harmful than leaving it.
In terms of physical health, yes. And on the flip side, living in the midst of good, warm relationships is highly protective.
There was one detail in this study that I found absolutely fascinating. The researchers looked back at the men when they were 50 years old, and they tried to predict who would be happy and healthy at age 80?
This is one of my favorite parts of the study. If you were trying to predict who would be healthy at 80, you might think you should look at their cholesterol levels or their blood pressure when they were 50.
That would be the logical medical assumption.
But it was wrong. It wasn't their cholesterol levels that predicted how they would grow old. It was how satisfied they were in their relationships. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80.
That is incredible. Our relationships actually buffer us from some of the problems of getting old.
They do. The study showed that good, close relationships seem to protect us. For example, the happiest couples in the study, the ones in their 80s, reported that even on days when they had lots of physical pain, their mood stayed happy.
But the people in unhappy relationships didn't have that protection.
No. When the people in unhappy relationships had physical pain, it was actually magnified by their emotional pain. They suffered more because they didn't have that emotional support.
So, relationships protect our bodies and our tolerance for pain. But what about our minds? I think that leads us to the third lesson.
Yes. The third big lesson is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains.
How?
It turns out that being in a securely attached relationship to another person in your 80s is protective.
What do you mean by securely attached?
It means being in a relationship where you feel you can really count on the other person in times of need. The people who have that feeling, that sense of, I know this person has my back, their memory stayed sharper for much longer.
And I assume the opposite is true for those who feel like they can't count on their partners.
Exactly. The people in relationships where they feel they really cannot count on the other person, those are the people who experience earlier memory decline.
This brings up an important question about reality. When we talk about good relationships, does that mean they have to be perfect? Do these couples have to agree on everything all the time?
No, and that is a very important nuance. Some of the octogenarian couples, the couples in their 80s, bickered day in and day out. They argued all the time.
Right.
But as long as they felt that they could really count on the other person when the going got tough, those arguments didn't take a toll on their memories.
That is a relief to hear. It's not about never fighting. It's about trust. It's about knowing someone is there for you.
Precisely. It's about that deep sense of security.
So if this wisdom is so old, I mean, everyone says love is all you need. Why is it so hard to get and so easy to ignore? Why were 80% of those millennials focused on wealth instead?
Well, the source puts it quite bluntly. We are human. We like a quick fix. We want something we can get that will make our lives good and keep them that way. We want to buy a solution.
And relationships are definitely not something you can buy.
No, relationships are messy. They are complicated. And the hard work of tending to family and friends isn't sexy or glamorous. It's also lifelong. It never ends. You don't just fix a relationship once and then forget about it. It is a constant practice.
It's interesting because the men in the study, back when they were young, believed the same things the millennials do today. They believed that fame, wealth, and high achievement were what they needed to go after to have a good life.
They did. But over and over, for 75 years, the study showed that the people who fared the best were the ones who leaned into relationships with family, with friends, with their community.
So let's talk about that leaning in. The men who were happiest in retirement were the ones who actively worked to replace workmates with new playmates. They didn't just sit back, they built new connections.
That's the key. It requires action. You have to participate in your own life.
So for the listener right now, especially those of you trying to improve your English and your life at the same time, I want to ask you directly, What does leaning into relationships look like for you? If you want to start investing in your future self today, what can you actually do?
The possibilities are practically endless, but the source gives some really simple suggestions. It could be something as simple as replacing screen time with people time.
That's a big one. Put down the phone and look at the person in the room with you.
Exactly. Or livening up a stale relationship by doing something new together. Go for a long walk, have a date night. Or reach out to that family member you haven't spoken to in years.
That can be a tough one, especially if there is a grudge or an old argument.
It is tough, but the study suggests it is absolutely vital. Those all too common family feuds take a terrible toll on the people who hold the grudges. Holding on to anger is toxic for you.
So forgiving, or at least reconnecting, is actually a selfish act in a way. It's for your own health.
In a way, yes. It is investing in your own well-being.
I love how practical this is. It is not about making $1 million or becoming a CEO. It is about calling your mom. It is about having coffee with a friend. It is about actually listening to your partner.
It is. And it is about realizing that the good life isn't a destination you arrive at once you have enough money. It is a path you walk with other people.
We're coming to the end of our deep dive, but I want to leave the listener with a final thought. We started by asking where you would invest your time and energy, and I hope the answer is a little clearer now.
It really all comes down to a quote from Mark Twain. He looked back on his life more than a century ago, and he wrote this: "There is no time, so brief is life, for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There's only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that."
There is only time for loving. That is a powerful place to end. The good life is built with good relationships. So here's our challenge to you. Think about somebody you haven't spoken to in a while. What is stopping you from picking up the phone right now? As soon as this deep dive ends, go speak to someone you care about. Don't just text them. Call them. Or go see them. Invest in that relationship.
Your future self at age 80 will thank you for it.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Go build those connections. We'll see you next time.